Okay, so one other thing that I mentioned in a couple of places in class and also in the assignment is TEI. This is a really important topic that we're not really going to make use of, but which you need to be introduced to a little bit in order for you to be able to feel competent in other classes you take in the digital humanities. So let's talk about it briefly and in relationship to what we just learned about HTML and CSS. HTML is one text encoding system, not encoding. But of course, there are lots and lots of other systems for encoding text. I mean, in our assignment, we're using a completely different one, which we'll talk about in the next mini lecture. So these different encoding standards and practices have different purposes, so they're suited to specific purposes. HTML is a web standard, but there are also other standards. And one of those is called TEI, the Text Encoding Initiative. It is an extremely influential standard that was designed by and for humanists, and especially for encoding textual complexity. TEI, well, TEI is both the organization, the Text Encoding Initiative, and the standard that that organization provides. That standard is a dialect of a broader language, which is called the Extensible Markup Language, XML. XML looks a bit like HTML, but it's much more complex. And it remains, well, its heyday for end users has largely passed. It remains a really, really important technology in many domains. So for instance, your Word docs and your PowerPoint slides and everything you do, your Excel spreadsheets, all that is stored in an XML format. The syntax for XML is similar to HTML, but its extensions are more powerful. It also can be way harder to read. Right now, what we're looking at is not so complex, but if you look at a real example of XML out in the wild, it's extremely difficult to follow. And maybe in class, we can take a look at what one of your Word documents looks like when it's uncompressed. Here we have a trivial example, which is taken from a tutorial on W3 Schools, which takes, this is not a piece of text encoding. Instead, it's just treating as a book as an entity which needs to be, like, say, put into a database in the way that you would add a line to your spreadsheet. So you might have a spreadsheet of books which had titles, authors, years, and prices. If you wanted to express that in XML, you would express it in this way. You'd have a book tag, and inside the tag, so we have an opening tag here, a closing tag here, and then inside that book tag, we have another set of tags. And so this nested structure is hierarchical. We have an outside, and then children, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of that outside tag. In this case, we only have children. We have the book. Its category is children, and so it has an attribute category, and the value of the attribute is children. And we have a title, Harry Potter, author, J.K. Rowling, year 2005, and the price $29.95. There's in fact no Harry Potter text, I don't believe. It's the first one called Harry Potter? I don't think so. And certainly not from 2005. So that would be kind of lousy data to have in your database. So that's a very trivial example of what XML looks like. TEI is a dialect of XML, and as soon as you start to look at it, you can see that it has that structure, that HTML-like structure that you see in other XML entities. But what distinguishes TEI from some random piece of XML that you or I create is that the tags are all defined in a standard which is available online. So this is actually valid XML TEI, what we have written here, and it defines a poem as a group of lines, and inside the poem there are subdivisions, stanzas, which are themselves also groups of lines. So an LG is a line group, and then it has individual lines, and inside the lines there might be additional markup. So this is a poem. This is all taken from the TEI examples, the tutorials website. It's kind of my favorite one, maybe. It's a poem that goes something like this. Papadum, oatmeal, bubblegum, cut of veal, mint for pie, frozen peas, video for guys, selection of teas, paper towel, garbage bags, pasta sauce and parmesan, pumpkin seed and olive oil, cheesy crisp and favorite mags, kidney beans, one large can, cling film, and kitchen foil. See how I'm not really managing the rhymes in the last two stanzas. Oh, well, sorry. But what we have here is lines, and then inside the lines, we also have an indication of where there's a rhyming syllable. And these are standard tags for TEI. What makes TEI powerful is that any TEI trained scholar will likely tag the relevant entities in a similar way. And so the standard enforces a kind of a scholarly practice, which then becomes transferable from one scholar to another. And so scholars can easily build on each other's work in digitizing texts. And so in this way, because it provides such a platform, TEI has become a really significant piece of infrastructure for scholars. We are not using TEI in the class, but the project of turning text into data is a project that we are interested in, and we're interested in its potential to transform scholarship, also whatever pitfalls it might have, and while the exercise that we do doesn't easily scale, any work you do in TEI does scale. It can be easily contributed to a broader project of which many other scholars might be a part. So we're not using TEI, but you might want to use TEI if you want to record textual complexities in a rigorous format, if you want to collaborate with others or make your work public and useful to other people, and if you really want to be part of a scholarly community around textual analysis, then you need to understand the tools that those other scholars use. So our work is, another typo, thematically similar to what TEI scholars do, even if we don't use the same technology. So, this allows us to think a little bit about the peculiar technical affordances of different systems, but also about our assignment helps you learn thought patterns that will be useful when you encounter TEI. Okay, see you in the next